Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Tanya.
So I'm Tanya Gill, and I'm sitting in Chicago. And I was raised in California, and I've been in Chicago for about 15 years now.
And I'm Marcia Teusink. I'm an American artist, but living in London. I've been in London for the last 13 years, but I've known Tanya for several decades now.
Yeah.
Through kind of an artist residency group that we were both part of. We only started working together recently, however.
I was going back through when we did start. So it was mid 2019. So it's been a while now.
Yep. A lot has happened.
A lot has
happened. Both in the world and in our studios.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So in the exhibition, we actually have two parts. One is object-based and one is video-based. And so we're going to take turns talking about the work. So for the objects, way back in 2019, when we started working together, what we noticed is that, through the decades, we've circled around the same themes, but we started noticing in our Instagram feeds that we had a lot of the same forms, and like collapsing structures. And so there's obviously something similar going on in our studios and our thoughts. And so we started working together using those as a starting point and the idea of the precarious. And then we also started sharing materials. Like I'd mail some of my materials to Marcia and vice versa. So the studio ended up being in conversation. And so the objects that you'll see in the exhibition all came out of that process of sort of this back and forth. And then like when I would mail Marcia photos and forms and materials and I'd see what she would do, then that would be a spark for me. And I'd get back in the studio and sort of reform what I did. And as we were bringing it all together, we realized there's some objects that have had more than one life. Like they've just kept being transformed as the project developed.
Yeah, and that was a very slow process. Often it would take surprisingly weeks for the materials to arrive, and then a real physical process because we would receive actual things from each other, which was lovely.
Yeah.
But we also started to do a little bit of research and along the themes of precariousness and collapse. We're both very concerned with the environmental situation, and it's a theme that runs through our work. And I turned 50 this year and Tanya turned 50 last year. And we were just asking that obvious question, like what has been happening since we were born that we ended up where we are, or what hasn't been happening? And started looking into a lot of archival imagery to do with both treaties and different environmental disasters. And that led to the video project. And that was this kind of different way of working where we were having a call and response in images digitally that we could do very quickly and do also just on Zoom calls together and using the computer. So it was kind of in a different process than having these materials taking the snail mail route across the ocean.
Yeah, I think I really felt that slow and fast way of working.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I guess another question that we've been posed is what we gained from this collaboration in terms of anything, our own practice or anything. Tanya, do you want to start out?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when you and I were talking about this question, we decided what we mainly gained is that when you work in a collaboration, it's obviously very open. You're not too sure where it's going to go, and there's a large amount of play. And so just experiencing that process and then wanting to bring that into our own individual practice and remembering to be open and to play and to bring that joy and the unexpected into the work. So that was one thing we talked about.
Yeah, and that even sending each other objects, like the piece of fabric that Tanya would choose as opposed to the piece of metal that I would choose, has such different qualities. So just having that kind of quality, the type of, edge quality or color or something is something that you wouldn't normally use. And then it kind of sparks off lots of ideas. And then what you do with them as well. And then one thing I particularly loved is because we were in very different time zones. Often things would happen while I was sleeping in Chicago. So I'd like wake up so it's kind of like the project goes on even when you're not there, which feels like such a kind of exciting thing. And also a bit of a relief that it's not all you having to direct something.
Right.
And I'll just like with two people, it's like a third thing happens, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And so lastly, on this question, the other thing we talked about was video, that we'd both been interested in video, but we were able to take on this project together, and that's made it much more interesting. And to just learn together has been fantastic.
Definitely.
So I think we're on our last question. Why do you think global collaboration is important?
Yeah, I think for both of us, the idea of collaboration is exciting because it's so much about getting rid of this idea of like the individual artist.
Yeah.
And so much of what's happening in the world is calling attention these days to how we're so connected and we're not separate little entities, we're not isolated. So this kind of decentering of this idea of the artist as this individual creative genius, when instead it is, I think it always is actually a conversation.
Yeah, I think it's always a conversation. And I mean, I really see that as a myth. I mean, if we go back through history, there's not one artist who did it all by themselves. They had support, they had influences. So sort of helping to debunk that myth. Yeah. So the decentering, in terms of climate change, kind of like different people coming together with a question in the middle, bringing different perspectives, it's just so needed right now. So it's something that's important to both Marcia and I in terms of just thinking, and everyone thinking and sort of tackling these climate issues that we all have in front of us.